The UN are in a position where they are able to impose policy on sovereign nations. Democracy is becoming meaningless. And the only reason those stories are not being told is because legacy media are in lockstep with one another in order to prevent truthful, open and honest conversations happening that would allow us to form new alliances. We'll be looking at that in Here's the News. But now, without going too much more deeply into this obvious crisis and counter-narrative to how the war between Ukraine and Russia began, let's have a look at the Empire State Building being lit up as a giant Pfizer needle. For what reason exactly? This is a press release about that story. Today, the Empire State Building turned its iconic building blue to announce that the CDC recommends everyone 6 months of age and older gets this season's updated COVID-19 shot. The blue light symbolises our gratitude and appreciation for the updated vaccines and all those who made it possible. A literal monolith and icon of American culture is being turned into an advertisement for a private company. When did the symbols of a great nation become co-opted by a corporation? How has this been allowed to happen? And how is it still allowed to be referred to as a democracy? Let me know in the chat. Marty Makary, professor, Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, wrote in the New York Post that Pfizer's version of the new vaccine has not been tested on humans at all. We only have data about antibody production from 10 mice. If I wasn't reading that from a reliable scientist myself, I would assume that it was untrue. How is that plausible and feasible that a national cause, an international notion, can be presented to a global population on the basis of 10 mice? The experience of 10 mice is being used to undergird an ongoing global program. For me, that's a cause for some concern. In summer 2020, as COVID vaccines moved ahead at warp speed, the companies behind them promised they wouldn't make too much money. Let's see how that went. Pfizer chairman Albert Bourla was emphatic. His company was developing a COVID vaccine for the good of humanity, not for money, he told Time magazine in 2020. This is not business as usual, he said. If you were calculating return on investment, we would never do these things. We were discussing that back in March, what that means to human lives, to the economy of the world, so it must be that we take those measures. Thus, Pfizer would not overcharge for the mRNA vaccine it was developing with the German company BioNTech, Bourla said. We're going to charge governments a very, very nominal value, he said. Asked directly if Pfizer intended to profit, Bourla said, we will make a very, very marginal profit at this stage. So, were Pfizer telling the truth? Pfizer made more than $100 billion in profits from the COVID vaccine in 2022 alone. Those facts seem to me to be significant. Those facts seem to me worthy of discussion. And I don't think we're going to see that discussed on the mainstream media. Let me know in the chat if you've noticed how the mainstream media reports on certain stories, investigating them extremely thoroughly, and elsewhere there is little or no debate or dissent. What do you think about that? What do you think is actually happening? So, whether it's the war in Ukraine and NATO